Here's everything you need to know in Apple's 103-minute WWDC keynote in 8 minutes and 46 seconds. You know these updates are going to be amazing when the first thing that Apple talks about is personalizing your home screens. With iOS 18, you can colorize your apps, you can rearrange your apps, you can make your control center even more complicated. Now, I haven't touched an Android device in about 6 years because my doctor says I'm allergic, but I'm pretty sure I could do all of that back then. With iOS 18, you can now lock an app, so when you hand off your device to somebody else, they can't do anything with it. Could have swore that was called guided access. You can also hide apps, which, you know, for the discerning user, and you can also hide the Bluetooth devices that you don't want people to know about. Seriously, with iOS 18, I think somebody watched the Ashley Madison doc on Netflix and was like, we totally have to lock down our apps and our Bluetooth devices. Now, to add to this Privacy Sunday, Apple also updated the ability to restrict how many contacts an app has access to. Now, moving on, Apple has made messages a bit flashier, giving us limitless ways to tap back. Odd question, what other tap backs do you guys use beyond hearts, exclamation mark, and thumbs up? Like, we needed more? You can now format text in your messages, which is super important. You can have text effects because you want an animation to reflect how you would say things if the person was there. Away. Anything that we have with iOS 18 is the ability to send messages via satellites. They don't talk about the price of it, but if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere and you need to give that custom tap back, you now can. Mail's getting a few new features. I'm looking forward to those because I'll take anything to help me manage my inbox. That says 14,525 unread messages. iOS 18 is going to be able to contextually categorize our emails automatically, which is going to be very helpful. Maps got some love in iOS 18 as you can use topographic maps now to plan your hikes. Only in the US, because only people in the US hike. Well, it gets an update that allows you to transfer cash by holding your phone close to somebody else's phone, as well as new ways to run yourself into deeper credit card debt. Journal got updated with some new insights and goals, and as a side note, do you guys still use Journal? Because I don't. I really liked that feature when it got announced last year, but nothing beats pen and paper when it comes to journaling, for me personally. Game mode is coming to the iPhone, so anytime you're gaming, nothing else is going to be running in the background. Now, Apple says the photo app got a massive redesign, but I'll let you guys decide if it's massive. Instead of a grid everywhere, you got a grid at the top and album stuff at the bottom. That's a massive redesign. In the album section, there's options to sort and omit certain types of images. Now, carousels, which are basically albums of photos that were good enough to take but not good enough to remember or care about, can now be accessed by swiping right. Honestly, I really don't see this as a redesign, so I'm not as excited as Apple thinks I should be. Basically, Apple's just shuffling things around. Now, AirPod's got a small but important update. You can now interact with Siri via head nod and shakes. That's pretty cool, right, Monty? Voice isolation through the AirPods got an update, as well as better audio for games, as developers can now use spatial audio. Now, when it comes to audio and home, Apple TV now has a feature called Insight that lists out all the people in a scene. That looks pretty cool. Oh wait, it's the X-ray vision from Amazon Prime Video. Way to go, Apple. Way to go. Apple also highlighted improvements to the dialogue tracks in movies, as well as having closed captions being more accurate. 21.9 projector support is being added, and the most important feature to come out of WWDC 2024 is the inclusion of the Snoopy screensaver for Apple TV. Seriously, Apple? Alright, on to the updates to WatchOS, and I'm a big fan. Apple's adding a feature called Training Load, which is a way of measuring your efforts. And this is important because being healthy is all about being consistent, doing the same healthy things over and over and over again. But because we're humans and we have this knack for taking things to the extreme, we have this tendency to do healthy things in a really unhealthy manner. So Training Load will tell you if what you're doing is good for you for the long term, or if you need to start laying off. With other health stuff, cycle tracking gets updated with a bunch of pregnancy stuff, and Smart Stacks get a boost with the OS pushing contextual widgets to the top, which is kind of useful from my perspective. All right, let's talk about iPadOS. All the fancy new things about moving apps, you know, and changing colors of apps is there for iPadOS. Apple's adding a floating tab bar to their apps, which is going to be an alternative to the table of contents, or whatever the side windows are called. Monty likes this ad. SharePlay has been updated with the ability to draw on the screen. Now this is a terrible feature because I'm tech support for my family, and before, support could only happen when I visited, but now I can be reached anywhere, anytime. Yes, Mom, just reset the router. In Freeform, instead of trying to find whatever you drew in the limitless expanse, you can add scenes so you can find whatever you drew in that limitless expanse. The coolest thing for iPadOS is the addition of the calculator, specifically math notes. Now, when I was watching this, I immediately had PTSD from all the Kuman I did growing up. Mr. Wong thought I was going to amount to anything. I'm a YouTuber, Mr. Wong. Kuman didn't help me at all. Now, I was initially sold on this, but towards the end of the keynote, they were showing some more complicated stuff with math notes, and I'm really curious to test it in my garage with all the stuff that I'm building. Inches and fractions of inches and adding them all up and drawing schematic for it. I really want to see it in action. I'm also excited to show this feature to my kid because he's always asking me these silly math questions like 82 times 19. All I can do now is just give him my iPad. He can write all the stuff that he wants, and I can just keep ignoring him while I doom scroll on my iPhone. Now here's an odd thing. Apple doesn't like how you write because they've trained iPadOS to make your writing more legible. Now here's the thing that doesn't really make sense to me. Apple is claiming that it's learning about my writing style to make my writing style look more like my writing style by correcting how I write. That's bullcrap. I like the fact that I'm the only person who can read, write, I write. It's like an old school privacy measure, man. All right, let's talk about macOS, and it's named SaberTooth. No, it's not. It's called Sequoia. The cat OSs were way cooler than the place names, honestly. I hope they do dinosaurs next. macOS Giganatosaurus. Now, Apple spent most of their time in this section talking about iPhone mirroring, basically using your iPhone on your Mac because you're too lazy to get your iPhone out of your jacket pocket. Notifications from the iPhone also show up on the Mac, so while you're low jacking your iPhone, it stays locked. Coolest thing I saw was the ability to transfer files through the mirroring on the Mac to the iPhone. Windows management gets a boost, and video calls now have a feature called Presenter Preview. macOS now has a password app, and the new version of Safari now uses machine learning to highlight the important things on a website. Now, this is kind of a double-edged sword from my perspective. On one hand, the internet is generally filled with SEO-laden content that's just very, very useless, so having a tool to pick out the most important pieces, I think it's a good thing, right, Monty? But on the flip side is that I'm relying on a machine to tell me what it thinks is important. Now, as a side note, I'm curious to see what this feature does when you go to those adult tube sites. Like, what's it going to highlight? What's important about it? How a video plays in the window goes through a little tweak, which is a neat ad. Now, Apple's doing a big push on gaming because they spent a few minutes talking about how awesome gaming on the Mac is by highlighting the ability to play old games like Control. Yay! Now, it's been 23 years since I bought my first Mac, and here's hoping that this year, Mac becomes good for gaming. Now, the biggest announcement at WWDC is AI. Not artificial intelligence, Apple intelligence. That's a bit cheeky, Apple. Now, I'm still kind of on the fence on this, but basically Apple Intelligence is using the power of large language models and integrating it into all their OSs. So all the really superficial AI things like writing stuff for you is there, creating AI images to complement your mom is there. We've all seen that ChatGPT does that all the time. But what's neat is going to see how Apple integrates the AI with all the content on your phones. Apple kept referring to this semantic index or network, and from my understanding, your Apple device is going to have a contextual understanding of all the stuff that's stored on your iPhone, so it has access to all that information in the background in order to help you make a decision. Now, if you've used ChatGPT, you know that best answers come when you give it a lot of information, and so it takes time to formulate the request that you make to that LLM. But with Apple Intelligence, it knows everything already because it has access to your entire device. So you don't have to feed it all the information because all the information is already there. Sounds sketchy from a privacy perspective, doesn't it? Now, I'll be honest with you, Apple's pretty good with privacy. And for this AI stuff, they have this thing called private cloud compute. So your device is going to decide if it can't do the query on the device, it's going to hit up this private cloud, which is built on Apple's M series of chips and has this transparency software built into it so that some sort of inspection can be done to it. I don't know. We'll find out more in the coming days. Now, I'll say that I'm more comfortable giving Apple access to my entire device rather than Microsoft. Even Adobe, seriously, that EUA debacle is just brutal. Ultimately, this gives Siri the ability to understand us better and in turn provides us better information. Now, there's two things that pop out to me. The first is that we are relying even more on a machine to organize our lives, essentially. We're becoming Siri's pets. And the second thing is there's a bit of genius to all of this. We're essentially becoming this symbiotic relationship with these devices. It's less of a user-consumer and more of just kind of like living. Instead of walking around with our heads down and talking with our thumbs, AI is going to do all of that for us so that we get to focus on other things like actually living instead of just using. Anyways, that's all I got. What do you guys think about the new features in the OSs? I'm going to be doing a deep dive on all the new features, or the ones that I find interesting in the next few days, so I do stay tuned for that. Anything else, Monty? Thanks for watching.